Can you fly a drone over my house? That's a bit of a controversial and loaded question really, isn't it? So when I spotted it in the Times letters section recently, it certainly caught my eye. Let's take a look at it, and I want to hear your responses to it as well. Everyone, my name is Sean and welcome to Geeksvana. So over here in the UK we have a very famous news publication called The Times and the Sunday Times. There is a letters section which is a long tradition here in the UK where people can send in questions and it will basically be farmed out to all sorts of experts, from gardening to legal questions and everything in between. Recently one has caught my eye because it related to drones. Let's take a look. Okay, I'm going to be reading my notes on this one, which I'll also bring up on screen. So the letter was posed: how can I stop flying drones from over my house? What are your rights when you see a drone above your property? Are drones allowed to check out your house, garden, land without permission? Can you shoot it down? The question was posed by Kat in Suffolk, and it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because it's one that I think is certainly something where us drone flyers will often ponder. Can I fly over that property? Can I fly here? Where you can fly, of course, in the UK is such a hot topic within the drone hobby as well. So it's perhaps understandable when members of the public see drones flying over their property, they might be wondering what's happening. Seems a bit of a strange way to ask this question in particular, and certainly a loaded one if you get the pun. As UK viewers will know, the letters are answered by a range of expert panellists, and on this particular one it was a Mr. Ed Cracknell, who is a partner at Russell Cooke. Russell Cooke are a very large, very prestigious specialist firm of lawyers here in the UK. So here is his answer in full. It's a couple of paragraphs long, so bear with me whilst I read it, and then we'll talk about my own thoughts on it and come on to my question for you guys as well. But in the meantime, please do let me know in the comments below, as you're hearing the feedback here, what your thoughts are on this particular issue and how we can ensure that we don't have more sort of, confrontational issues in terms of flying over properties here in the UK moving forward. Drones are now a popular hobby and also have many useful commercial applications. Instead of using scaffolding to inspect a roof, now a drone can do the job. The emergency services use them. Delivery companies are even thinking of delivering packages by drone. But this growth in use has led to problems. Drones are noisy and could be an invasion of privacy in the wrong hands. A drone hovering above your property could be trespassing in your airspace. Interestingly, there's a part here in brackets, though it isn't clear how low they would need to be. Clearly, you cannot prevent commercial aircraft from passing over your property and could represent a nuisance. But the fundamental problem is how to do anything about it. Drones can be operated from great distances, so identifying the operator could be impossible. The Civil Aviation Authority says that you should report any safety concerns to the police and privacy concerns to the Information Commissioner's Office. A single pass overhead is unlikely to have any consequences, but repeatedly passing or hovering over your property, particularly at low altitudes and while filming, could result in a claim. You definitely should not shoot down a drone. Quite clear, that one. That would represent criminal damage. One day it might be possible to create a digital no drone zone in the immediate airspace above your property. Manufacturers could be made by law to ensure their drones observe these zones. Whatever happens, the law is currently unsatisfactory and will need to develop to deal with the emerging threat. Interesting one that. Ed is clearly an expert in his field and is, of course, a specialist lawyer operating in the UK. It doesn't really, to me, sound like he has too much knowledge of drones or the drone hobby, because of course he is unaware that no-fly zones, as far as manufacturers like DJI, etc., are already a thing. It's interesting from the privacy point of view. I would always recommend that you keep your drone very high up when you're passing over private residential property. From the point of view that privacy, the way that I look at it, the way that I try to keep things clear is, can I identify someone from the footage I'm taking? Of course, I'm not going to publish the footage of me sweeping across the top of somebody's property and it actually show their garden or show the people on the ground and that type of thing. That's really not what we're looking to film here. So often I might be passing over people's properties and they may even be in the garden, but my camera is pointed at something else which I'm much more interested in recording, often on the horizon beyond. A general rule of thumb that I use is around 50 meters, but it does depend on the circumstances, and of course it also depends on what you're flying and whether or not you're using any kind of zoom function. But again, if you are focused on something else in the background, if you're focused on, let's say you've got a row of houses and there is a sculpture or a structure that you're recording behind it, the fact that the camera is pointed on there means you're very unlikely to pick up anything which is going to identify anybody. A couple of interesting points raised by Ed, in particular the fact that of course it is criminal damage to shoot down a drone, and let alone the firearms charges that would also accompany that. One day it might be possible to create a digital no drone zone in the immediate airspace above your property. This is something which is starting to raise its head across the world. Over in Russia, it is now quite commonplace for businesses and property owners to have illegal jammers jamming the airspace above their property to stop drones being able to be flown directly over them. The issue there is, of course, a lot of these jammers causes the drone to fly away or to land immediately, which means you can actually end up losing your drone. In terms of creating a digital no drone zone in the immediate airspace above a property, I don't see how that's particularly practical from the point of view that you're not going to be able to have safe flight with a drone that's constantly having to adjust its path to avoid small pocket no-fly zones, essentially, that have to be almost literally pocket no-fly zones. You could also argue that setting a minimum height above residential property could be an easy way to get round the solution. So let's say no drone flight above residential property less than 50 meters. The issue with that, however, is that does restrict the amount of commercial drone flights you can have. Let's say there's a PFCO or a GVC holder in the area flying legally within the limits of their operational authorization from the CAA. They may well need to get down lower in terms to actually complete the function and the mission which they are flying for. So there isn't really any kind of blanket kind of ban or restrictions that I feel would work very well in this case. I do feel, however, that the current situation of ensuring that you're not actually encroaching on someone's privacy and that you're flying safely is more than enough. We have had a lot of new drone rules here in the UK, and there are of course lots of videos on this channel explaining them. There is a playlist in fact in the description below to our drone rules video series. Take a look. However, the one thing I would say is that with the current privacy rules, which have been tightened, with things like having to have an operator ID on your drone, even if it's under 250 grams, if it has the camera. So again, you're actually being linked to that camera as an individual. And with the somewhat complex privacy rules that are already in place, but essentially ensuring that you're not encroaching on someone where they would expect privacy, so somewhere like their back garden, and trying to ensure that you're not identifying anybody as an individual, is really a good rule of thumb to take. Whether or not I think we need to see yet more regulations specifically to deal with drones flying over someone's property, I think could open up a can of worms. The advantage here we have here is I don't think it will happen also from the point of view of the commercial drone flights. Now, I'm not talking about pop-sock drone deliveries here, but instead talking about other functions such as emergency services drones and that type of thing, but also, as I've said before, perfectly valid commercial drone flights by operators and hobbyists who are sticking to the current rules and regulations. I think there does need to be a little bit of education in terms of the public here. You wouldn't expect to stop a helicopter flying over your property, nor would you go walk out into the street, hopefully you wouldn't anyway, and attempt to stop the cars driving past your house. Now, we also, as a hobby, have to take responsibility from the point of view that if those cars were creeping past someone's house and everyone's looking inside the front window, then of course you would have a kind of issue with that. And in my opinion, you would probably be within your rights to have that issue. So again, with the drone side of things, the drone hobby, we do need to be careful in terms of how we fly our drones and how low we get to other people's properties. The final piece of opinion I would give on that particular subject is speed, in terms of making sure you keep the throttle up on your drone so you clear the properties fairly quickly, because then of course before they've even heard it, you've gone and moved on to the next part of your mission. So take time to plan your flights, and when you are around residential houses, take that into account and perhaps adapt your flight to suit the issues of privacy, but also from the issues of, frankly, the PR. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this particular story, how you would solve this particular issue, if you think there even is an issue there to begin with. Again, if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, and If you're still watching this video now, hit that like button to give the YouTube algorithm a bit of a nudge. Sean out.